Here's to the mom and pops, the small ones and the big ones. Here's to the first, second, and third shifts. Here's to those that enjoy being in the weeds night after night. We applaud you. You are the reason we do what we do. When we're sourcing our produce, we have your table in mind. When we're packing your order, we have your regulars in mind. When we're making a delivery, we have your surprise party in mind. When we strive for great customer service, we have you in mind. You are where people celebrate, where meetings happen, where love begins and sometimes ends. You don't just serve food and drinks, you serve community and friendship and heart. You give families a break and a home away from home, a place to watch the game, a place for girls' night out, a place to make memories. That's why everything we do with you in mind. From where we source our food to how we deliver it, from our seasoned chefs to our high-quality culinary equipment, you are at the heart of everything we do. We will continue to innovate. We will continue to deliver quality ingredients and a great customer experience. We are Performance Food Group, and we're here with you.
Thank you for joining our presentation today. Today we're going to talk about the past year and what we've done to make sure that we could stay competitive and continue to grow in this volatile marketplace. Much has changed in the last 12 months, but what has not changed is our strategy and the support that we've given our customers and our associates. We've worked hard to strengthen our balance sheet. We have plenty of liquidity. We prepared very well for the downturn, and more importantly, we were prepared for the accelerated growth as things improved, beginning in about June and going all the way through the end of the calendar year. As we were faced with shelter in place, and for the most part restaurants were closed, we pivoted, and we pivoted quickly. Of course, we took a look at our workforce. We let very few people go, but we did a significant amount of furloughs. We did those with benefits so that when the marketplace came back, we could bring the people back on board. We didn't want to go through training of new people when we felt like we had a really good existing workforce. We also made a decision to receive the product that was on its way to us. We saw a lot in the marketplace where people just refused any product that was coming in. Early in the pandemic, it looked like a mistake as business really went down and we had to take particularly protein to the freezer. But later in the pandemic, when there was significant shortages of product, we had product, albeit frozen product, but we had product, and customers responded really well. We actually had to take a period of time where we just couldn't sell any of the product to new customers. We needed to make sure we were taking care of our long-term existing customers. We stayed focused on making sure we got product to them, product in good condition. Our routing changed significantly, where our automated routing systems didn't mean anything because customers were closed and some customers were open and doing more business than normal because of their takeout capabilities. So we just threw out those systems. We didn't worry about routing. We just got to the customer and got them product. What we found, obviously, was a big increase in takeout disposable products, all types of cleaning supplies, particularly sanitizers. So we had to pivot, use one of our divisions called Afflink that is big in those type of items. They helped make sure that we had product everywhere. The other thing we experienced was people cutting back on their menus and getting items off of their menu that didn't travel well. And we were left sometimes with SKUs that that we had to find locations for. We got a lot of help from retail. We sold a lot of product into grocery stores. And then the other thing that we decided to do, which was a big help for us, was to focus on people that were effective from a takeout curbside standpoint with their products. So it was pizza, Italian, Hispanic business, barbecue, all things that really traveled well and were suited for takeout. When we saw just how disrupted our customers were, we decided that we weren't going to add any more disruption to them, and we thought of our sales force as the lifeline for those customers. So we did furlough some people that were less than 90 days, but for the most part, we kept our entire sales force. It helped us significantly. We found people didn't want to transmit their own orders. They wanted to talk to a salesperson. We had them there. They were ready to help. And it was just a great decision that we made as a company. Our sales force pivoted very quickly. Obviously, just the old-fashioned phone call was a big help. They found a lot of customers on Facebook to find out when they were going to be back in business, and just kept those lines of communication really good. We started to see in the press these predictions that I've even seen as much as 50% of the independent restaurants were going to go out of business. We did not find that at all. They're very, very resilient people. And they just pivoted to takeout. They pivoted to curbside. Now, fine dining certainly affected. It's just not the type of meal that people are looking at for takeout. Pricing's high. A lot of going to fine dining is the experience. So we made sure we kept in touch with our fine dining customers, but we really focused on those people that we knew were going to do a good job in a takeout, curbside type environment. What we found with our chain business, and we're very heavy in casual dining, is that they all, to one degree or another, regrouped. We saw that they kind of closed restaurants that were borderline going into COVID. But they pivoted also to takeout. They pivoted to delivery. They did a really good job. Many of them put together long-term programs with third-party delivery people. Cut back on menus. We saw a good deal of that. But we've seen some good success among these chains, and we think that as the world gets back to normal, that casual dining restaurant is going to do very well. And then anybody who had a drive-through, not a big part of our customer segment, but we certainly have our share, has done excellent, and many of them are doing more business than they did in a pre-COVID environment. There were very large differences regionally in the reaction to this pandemic period of time. We have a great deal of autonomy with our opcos, so it helped us, and it helped us a lot. We have markets that are still today 40% behind last year and pretty much shut down. And we have several markets that we're actually doing more business than we were the previous year. So for our OPCO presidents, if you're in New York or Chicago or Minneapolis or really anywhere on the West Coast, you're in an entirely different world than if you're in Florida or you're in Texas. And it was greatly to our advantage that we could have all that managed locally and just spread kind of best practices from one company to another that were in similar situations. I feel that we had an advantage probably versus some of our competitors going through this. We have a very healthy pizza business, and we gained significant share during this. The industry itself was down from an independent standpoint, but we managed to get growth, that combination with it not being down very much and us gaining share. And we saw good strength in Hispanic, we saw good strength in barbecue. Fortunately, we're not very large in lodging, we're not very large in contract feeding, and those were heavily impacted. So I think that what we're going to see is that as we come out of this, that our customer base is still going to be very similar to what it was during the pandemic, and I think that's going to help us a great deal from a service level. It's going to be far less disruptive than it may be for others. Our Vistar business has been very impacted from this pandemic. What's done well has been the convenience store area, which is fairly new to us, has done well. Value stores have done well, and corrections has been quite stable. But any business that they're in that is dependent on people coming to the workplace, people traveling, or people gathering in groups has been severely impacted. So the theater business has been almost shut down throughout that whole period of time. We do have concern as to what size that business will eventually be, but there is so much product that is just sitting on the shelf waiting to be used that as theaters open up, we see some great months coming up, and then we'll kind of see as an industry how they go to market with movies and just how things are handled. Office coffee service, we suspect that people are not going to come back to the workplace as with the size that it is now. I think more jobs will be either at home or partially at home. So we expect that part of our business to be somewhat slower. We think that we could make up for that in our kind of vending and micro market business. Our vending has come back quicker, as most of these jobs are jobs that you have to be there to do your job. You can't do it from home. That's the heavy users of vending. And then we have several accounts that today, this is pretty widespread, today have cafeterias, and they've already let us know that as people come back to work, they're going to go from a cafeteria environment to a micro market, which would be somewhat similar, say, to having a room with vending machines, except the product is out for people to select it, much wider variety of product, a much wider size of product. And we think that combination of vending and micro market together is actually going to be larger than it was pre-COVID. And then the travel part of it, we do a lot of pantry business in mid-scale primarily, and somewhat maybe lower mid-scale hotels, and needless to say, there's not many people in those, so that business has been softer. And then the gift shops in the airports is a good business for us, and we think that's going to come back, but it's going to be a slow turnaround. The convenience business has been interesting. We've always been in it from a performance food service, and so has Reinhart, but not a big thrust for either company. But we actually do slightly more business out of our food service today, out of our food service distribution centers in food service than we do out of EB. But EB's been a great addition for us, good cultural fit. What happened there is really interesting to watch, but the first couple weeks of shelter in place, the food business was really big in convenience stores. As people went to grocery stores, shelves were empty or close to empty, and they would stop at a convenience store or two or three on the way home from the grocery store and just get whatever product that they could get. And what we saw was that as grocery stores got their shelves full, that went back to pretty much normal within a convenience store, actually a little less than normal. The food service dropped about 20% and has stayed there as people aren't comfortable, taking something off a roller grill or, something that's self-serve and somebody else may have picked it up and looked at it, whatever. But in spite of that, we've continued to grow our food service business just by getting more and more accounts. We did see a good tobacco business. We don't expect that to continue, and we feel that as things get back to normal, that march down in consumption of cigarettes will continue. Reinhart's been an interesting acquisition for us. We felt that the cultural fit would be very good. I knew many of the people already, have known them for a long time. We felt the business was extremely well managed, and we just needed to help them have, by us, our scale combined with their scale, and just get more of a growth perspective into the company. So we had owned the business for only a little over 2 months when shelter in place came, which typically would be really problematic. But like I said, we had good relationships, the company was well run, and we just accelerated some of the plans that we had. We were able to get everybody on a common commission system with the performance food service people, a common pricing system. Things that really we felt would take a couple years, we were able to get done during this last year. And where we get our market share information, we ask them for another year to give us the performance and the Reinhart information separately, so the first year that we owned them. And what we saw is that fortunately we were able to perform significantly better than the marketplace. Reinhart was about the same as the rest of the industry, but over that period of time, we saw them move from the same as the rest of the industry to right about in the middle between the rest of the industry and us. And what that tells us is that they're going to continue to improve. And starting the beginning of this January, we're not even looking at them separately. We're looking at them together, and we want to put out the same type of growth combined as Performance Foodservice put out separately. What we're prepared for post-COVID is higher takeout. Now, not as high as it is during the COVID environment. We think that people are going to rush back into restaurants. That's our belief. We think that takeout is going to go down significantly when that happens, and we're going to be urging our customers to make sure that they stay in it, because I think that once that initial period is over, I think people will fall back into habits that they had for 9-10 months. They're not going to order takeout as much as they did during COVID, but I think the takeout is going to be bigger than it was pre-COVID. We're also going to encourage people to keep that program in place for curbside that they've had, and I think third-party delivery, it is going to be a similar pattern, but in the end, it's going to continue to be a bigger part of what we do than it was before this pandemic. Our share gains picked up right away, April and May, but our business picked up during June, and pretty stable all the way through the end of November. We had great concerns about what would happen when the weather went cold in the north, and we did see some softness. Not as much as we thought, just takeout then did better. We missed the Christmas parties. That's a big part of our business. So December was a downturn from October and November, but for the quarter, we still in independent only had a 5% decline from last year. As we got into January, even though obviously the weather got worse and it got still colder yet, things came back, and we're looking today at about the same type of numbers that we ran in October and in November. We fully expect to see a good resurgence in volume as this vaccine gets widely distributed. We have several markets where we're actually doing more business than last year now. And as we went into this shelter in place, labor was not an insurmountable problem. We were doing fine with it, but not as well as we'd hoped to. People were hard to get. We're already experiencing that, where we're running sales increases over last year. So we've made sure, as I said, that we furloughed people. We didn't separate from those people. I think we're going into this with a good workforce and the right numbers of people. And the only headwind that we really see is, are we going to be able to get the number of people that we need? So what we've set up to do is to make sure that we're full 6-day-a-week delivery at our operations, and there may be some that we may deliver on Sunday, but we're going to make sure that in spite of any labor issues that we may have, that we're going to take care of our customers as they see the surge in volume. We have found that our suppliers had a very, very rough time early on in this pandemic, especially people that pack product for retail and food service, and we kind of came in last because retail, of course, was booming at the time, and we experienced a great deal of shortages inbound. That has gotten better. It's not back to what it used to be, but it's gotten much better. So as we go into this recovery mode, we're making sure that we have more inventory than we would normally have. We're making sure that we're in close communication with our customers so that we know if they're going to be going back to the old menu, if there's SKUs that we no longer stock, that we're going to need to stock again. And I think it's another place where our degree of autonomy will help us. We have purchasing people at every OpCo. So they're closer to the salespeople, they're closer to the customer, and we'll be prepared. We're going to make sure that we have the inventory that we need to take advantage of what we think will be a boom in business. Thanks for your time, and I'm going to turn this over to my CFO, Jim Hope.
Thank you, George. I want to discuss how we've handled the last 12 months from a financial and liquidity position and what we're expecting for the coming months. In March and April, soon after the shelter-in-place orders took effect, we moved quickly to raise capital to put our balance sheet in a good position for whatever came to pass. This meant drawing $400 million from our ABL, issuing shares for gross proceeds of nearly $350 million, a $275 million debt offering, and a $110 million 364-day term loan. As we said at the time, we took those actions both out of caution for what was an uncertain future, as well as wanting to be able to take advantage of any business opportunities that arose. In other words, we viewed financing activity as 1/3 defensive and 2/3 offensive. At this point in time, we're increasingly optimistic that the pandemic's impact on the economy will wane over the next several months. As a result, we believe that the need for our defensive positioning will reduce and the liquidity can be used for business building activities like inventory rebuilding and potential M&A. Let's discuss the specifics of our liquidity position. As of the end of the second quarter of our fiscal 2021, which we reported 2 weeks ago, we had approximately $1.9 billion of total liquidity. This was comprised of about $417 million of cash on hand and another $1.5 billion of availability on our ABL facility. Since that time, we have swept the vast majority of that cash position over to the ABL. Note that this does not dramatically change our liquidity position, but does save us a sizable amount in the interest carrying cost. Also, it shows our confidence in an eventual recovery and the current strength of our business. We have largely retained our liquidity position over the past several quarters. Despite recent reductions in payables, this shows the team's outstanding job with our working capital position. PFG has also maintained strong free cash flow, again despite some investments in working capital and capital expenditures designed to support our future growth. As we had expected, working capital gains from late fiscal 2020 began to reverse to start fiscal 2021. In the fiscal second quarter, we continued to work down payables, resulting in another quarter of cash outflow on that line item. However, this was partially offset by a $118.7 million income tax refund and cash generated from lower levels of inventory and receivables. As a result, cash from operations was just $24.4 million negative for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. I remain very pleased with our organization's continued management of our working capital position. As we have discussed, we are prepared to accelerate the pace of investments in working capital, particularly inventory when a stronger recovery takes hold. In fact, we want to be ready for a surge in demand, which could happen once the vaccination is near complete and diners rush to their favorite restaurant. Still, the timing of this is undetermined and depends heavily on the pace of vaccinations and no setbacks, such as a new strain of the virus. As George mentioned earlier, it will also likely require additional workforce hiring, particularly drivers and warehouse workers. While these areas of the labor force are typically tight, we believe we will have the staff necessary to meet restaurant demand. Again, we feel very good about our liquidity position and believe it will allow us to achieve these objectives without any stress on the organization. In summary, PFG has worked hard over the past 12 months to weather the marketplace challenges, and we feel very good with our performance and positioning within the food service industry. Because of our consistent investments in our sales force, customer service support, we've gained meaningful share in the food service segment, picking up business across customer and channel types. Despite significant headwinds in several Vistar channels, that organization has been diligent around its cost structure. It continues to look for new lines of business and is prepared for a recovery in some of the harder hit channels, though that may take some time. This is all supported by our liquidity and strong financial position, which we are committed to using to support long-term growth and the success of our business. Our associates are engaged and have risen to the challenges that the past 12 months have brought. We could not be prouder of what our organization has accomplished in the past year. Thank you for your interest in PFG.